Celine, hi. Hi, Becky Sue.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I have a ton of fortified wines to show you and all sorts of things to talk about.
I am so excited. I don't know why we didn't do this earlier. You have been one of my regulars to come and view and been so supportive this whole time. So I'm actually really thrilled. A little background for people. I was supposed to be in Bandol today with Eric de Saint Victoire of Chateau Pibernon in Bandol. The Mistral is apparently out of control today, and so he wanted to reschedule. So we're doing him on Wednesday at 11. And Becky Sue Epstein was so kind to jump in and be my guest today on, on the Jeff Show. So thank you, Becky. Would you start by introducing yourself and tell us who you are and how you got into the wine game and what you're doing these days?
Well, I'm an author and an editor. I'm becoming extremely famous thanks to my new book,
Oh, I'm going to put
Strong
it up.
Sweden.
So it's
Yay.
I will put that up for you, Becky Sue, because
Okay.
then people can see it. Because it's I'm afraid with those bottles too that it's going to be backwards. You know how it does, like
Yeah.
a thing. So that's Becky Sue's book, which is fabulous.
Is this backwards? Oh
Yeah,
well.
fine. We
Ooh.
um
Okay.
we
Well,
can shut and put them in store too. Anna, I'm going to be in Bandol on Wednesday. Go ahead, Becky Sue.
so I write about wine and spirits, and Jeff and I met at a tasting in New York with Bernice Lurton at the Chateau Clemence tasting, and discovered we love sweet wines and fortified wines. And Jeff was really kind enough to give me a cocktail recipe to use in my book, which you can't read because it's backwards, but it's here. And it's a cocktail made with Roussillon Vendu Naturel, which most people have never heard of, and the whole three-word thing scares them. But I make it simple as I can in the book. I'll tell you how the book started briefly. I went to the car dealer to get my car serviced, and they said, "You have a really clean hybrid, and we would really, really like to sell it. And wouldn't you like to get a new car? And we'll give you a great trade-in." And I'm like, what? What? This car's like 5 years old. And they said, they gave me a deal that I was so unbelievable. So right from there, I sent an email to my publisher. I've already written on champagne and brandy. And I said, wouldn't you like me to write a book on like port? Bearing in mind that the advance you get for this book is about covers the cost of the cup holders. But still, at least I thought I'll have some income.
Mm.
So I they said, well, we don't want a book about port, but what about writing about fortified wines? And I thought, well, that's good because I've been to Porto and I've been to Jerez and I know something about this. I travel around the world. So I said, okay, I'll do it. I chose the six major fortified wines, and there are vermouth, port, sherry, madeira, marsala, and vin doux naturel. And I started researching and contacting people and going to visit, and it took me a couple of years to travel all around and meet everybody that makes these incredible wines. And so it all started because of my car. And here we are a couple of years later. And I should also mention that when I started writing about wine, I was a restaurant reviewer for the LA Times, and I knew nothing about wine. I drank a little champagne, maybe some vodka if I wanted to work fast, but um, somebody brought an incredible wine to a dinner. And it was fish and sauce and the wine. I'm like, oh, I get it. I get it. I understand what the wine and food pairing is like. And I was off and running and researching wines.
I love
And
those.
this didn't happen till I was 30, so I missed the whole college binge drinking everything. So now I have later in life hangovers, but anyhow, I thought that I don't know exactly what you want to know today, but I have some interesting bottles to show you,
I
or to mention.
when one quick question though, as I have a question that I kind of know the answer, but not really. But when you just ran through those six fortified wines, it seems that they all kind of come from hot climates. Is that always true, somewhat true? And do you have a reason why? Or is that
Well,
effect?
yeah, I think actually there is a reason. There are several reasons. One is the geography. of the places is where the grapes grow. And also because they could fortify the wines, they could be transported all over the world to places where it was too cold to grow grapes and make wine. And fortifying the wines just means adding a neutral spirit like an unaged brandy to the wine after it's partially finished fermenting, so it kind of stops. It preserves a little bit of the, I mean, it could be just a few percent or a larger percent of the natural grape sugars, and it creates a product that lasts for years, decades. I mean, gives it an incredible life.
So, because when I did this Roussillon presentation, one of the things I came across is they said that the soil, whatever, was too hard to really dig cellars, and so they figured out fortifying would actually strengthen it to just survive the hot summers there. But then there's also the thing about surviving the journey around Spain and up to like northern Europe, which is what you're saying. Is that kind of common or unusual or?
Well, I mean, they had to do it. They didn't have refrigeration. And also remember that distillation was actually developed and promoted by Arnaud de Villeneuve in the Middle Ages in northern Spain, southern France. So these are the first people that knew about it. And when they added some distillation to their wine, they noticed that it lasted longer. So part of, I mean, geography plays a part of it. Nobody had cellars in the Middle Ages, so I mean, they had caves, and they used those for storage.
Yeah, true. All right. So do you want to go through those bottles, and when you tell each bottle, kind of give a lowdown about the region? Is that the easiest way to do it, or how would you like to go?
Yeah, just a sentence or two, and I'm really sorry that they're flipped,
Well,
but yeah.
but you
Um, so anyhow, this is one of the ones you know about. This is from Bagnols in France, and this is a fortified sweet one, and probably the most famous. And it's actually, they don't like you to say this, but it is Sauterne-like. So if you like the flavors of Sauterne and Barsac, then you'll be pretty happy with one of these golden sweet wines.
and
And the people in Roussillon were so great. They were they had me to stay, and they took me wherever I wanted, and they showed me how to drink their wines with the foods. This is a Catalan area, so they have things like really gorgeous sweet peppers that are in red and yellow strips like the Catalan colors, and it's a great thing to add to any meal. It really it's so easy to just grill them or roast them, and they pair beautifully with some of these sweet wines.
is that because it's
And
sweet and a little bit spicy, the pairing?
well, they're not spicy, but they're caramelized by the roasting or the grilling. So the flavors just really, they're more like just bell peppers, not so much spicy peppers in
Gotcha.
that particular case.
Very cool.
And they also have fish, which is salty, and that gives a contrast.
Well, that's
So
always
sorry, go on.
right on the coast, right?
Yeah.
Make
And you know it well, but this is the French Catalan area, and the signs are in Catalan too. But they don't tend to be the people that are agitating to be their own nation. That's more in Spain.
right.
The Catalan culture has become much more accepted within Spain, even though ever since Spain annexed it and in the late Middle Ages, they've been trying to eradicate it. No luck. Still Catalan.
And like I didn't realize this until again I was doing that research that Perpignan I think was where the king of Catalonia lived, and Carcassonne was actually a fortified castle because it was the furthest outreach of Catalonia. I think.
I had to do a lot of research on this and talk about because the borders then were not the same as the borders now, and they fluctuated over time. And for instance, one of the vermouth stories is one of the is that well here's a very famous French vermouth, but they have a new ombre style, no Prat, and the actual vermouth was invented in Torino, but Torino and the southern part of France, the Savoie, were all part of the same Savoy district ruled by the Savoy king, so they could move, they could move freely between what is now Italy and what is now France, and that's why even though vermouth was invented in Torino, and this is Koki vermouth. Koki vermouth de Torino, which is a new vermouth de Torino is a new category, and the Koki people were incredibly helpful, setting me up with visits with everybody they knew. It wasn't like just see as it was like here, go see as many people as you can, and here's where they are. So people could. So that's how vermouth culture spread, and that's how fortification had spread originally. Am I making any sense at all?
100%. But so don't really, I'm not so good on vermouth, so I would like you to tell people and me exactly what vermouth is. But are they able to make vermouth because of the Villeneuve Dude making the Vendoux? Because I think of them as totally separate because the Vendoux is sweet and vermouth is usually dry, but it's still using the quote technology that the fortification process.
Originally, vermouth was sweet. It was red, but it was made from white wine. It was red from the color of the herbs and spices in the wines. It's all basically made from white wine. There are a few people making it from red grapes now, but it's white wine, like not an exciting grape like the kind that you use in Armagnac or Cognac, because it really needs a little bit of health. So they would add spices and herbs, maybe a dozen or 18 in or even up into the 30s for different white and red vermouths. But basically, all of it is made from white wine that grows in the area, enhanced by fortification and herbal infusions.
So
And most people don't know what vermouth is at all,
exactly.
and that's what it is.
And there's all these like really cool small production super hip vermouths in the city. This is something.
Yeah, they are. This is one of them, the Del Professore,
Uh-huh.
which if you can get in this country. And I stumbled into this little tiny shop at the end of a lane outside of just in the middle of a tiny town in Italy, and this very nice guy was there, and he was closing up, and he's like, well, do you want to try this? Do you want to try that? Do you want to take some of these? When I said I was a journalist and I had been sent by the Koki people. And then I later found out that that was the guy, the Del Professore guy. I mean, it was really the owner, and he's like a legend. Most people never wouldn't know that he's the guy behind the counter in the store when no one else is there.
That
It was, I mean, amazing stuff like that kept happening to me. And one of the newest vermouth that is actually located in Torino is this one called Drapeau, and it's Drapo, and because Drapeau is like the French meaning flag, and it's the old dialect in Italy there. So I just got an email this morning about a new vermouth in upstate New York that I'm going to try out, and it's just people are doing it everywhere, and most people keep to the white wine and add their own herbs and spices. It's very critical, and you have to go through a lot of processes with regulations in the U.S. of what you can use and what you can't. Vermouth is typically flavored with artemisia, and that was the same thing that people got in trouble for with absinthe because they used a ton of artemisia and wormwood, but basically it was really, really, really crap alcohol, like wood alcohol that rotted their brains. It wasn't the artemisia itself, but it has such a bad reputation that the I think the FDA is afraid of it.
I didn't realize it was. I mean, I knew it wasn't the actual wood, but I never put that together that it was like rubbing alcohol. That if you drink that, you're gonna get sick from it.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do
So
vermouth that I can
go
find
on.
in Connecticut, and how do I drink it? Like somewhere outside of New York, what's a good vermouth I can find? And do I just put an ice cube in it? How do I drink it?
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, putting an ice cube in it, if it's either white or red, you can actually, for red, I would put a slice of orange in it, and for white, I might put any kind of green herbs from the garden and or a slice of lemon. And I often add a splash of club soda or tonic to make the drink a little bit lighter, because you don't want, even though, I mean, it's under 20% alcohol. It's not like a spirit. You're still, you're outside, it's hot, you're sipping,
That sounds
and
awesome.
plenty of ice.
And the time.
Yeah.
That sounds fabulous. All right, what's next?
Okay, so then I had been to the Jerez region, Jerez,
Hmm.
where sherry is made, and they have a lot. They're actually making vermouth. Some of the sherry producers are making really nice vermouths with the same grapes because they're white grapes that need something of interest. They need age, they need herbs, they need all sorts of, just an enhancement, and then they last a long time. But this one, I don't, you probably can't even read it. It says Almacenista. And Almacenista is Lustau's new line, and that there are many Almacenistas. And the Almacenista is, they were famously the people that gathered in the sherries that were made all over the Sherry Triangle region, and they aged them and they blended them and they sold them to the big distributors that got them out to the rest of the world. And so they're known as the people that really know the quality and quantity of what's available in sherry today. And they have been for the last 300 years.
And it's where do you get the flavor from that? If it's kind of a well, what are the? It's Palominos, the grape.
Yeah, mainly it's basically Palomino. It's a white grape, and they age it, and they age. There are different kinds of aging, and they age it under what they call floor, which is a kind of oh, it sounds terrible. It looks like a scummy algae that grows on top, but it actually prevents too much oxidation, and it also adds, it's like having the yeast in the bottom of the champagne bottle.
Right.
It adds more complexity to the flavors. So they're all different categories, but if you can get a beautiful manzanilla or something like that, that's another thing you can just eat, drink chilled or even over ice if, into a cocktail. And I think a lot of people think that sherry is sweet, but most of what's made and consumed today is dry.
Yeah.
Of course, there's really luscious, chocolatey
Mm,
Pedro Jimenez,
yeah.
but that's for dessert.
Next week I'm actually interviewing the lady that made that dry Pedro Jimenez, the white wine from Malaga that we were talking about, which I'm thrilled to meet her finally, Victoria Ordonez. When I think of sherry, my favorite way is to put it into soup, and right now it's about
Mhm.
to be tomato season. And there's, I think, a recipe where you just throw your bread and your garlic and your olive oil and your tomatoes and a little bit of sherry in a blender. So what sherry would I use for that? And I could drink the same thing, just chill it with some club soda.
Yeah, I would get a fino, a dry fino, and definitely chilled. And if you want club soda or not, you as I said, all of these are not spirits. They're lower in alcohol than spirits. They're basically 20%, or I think sherry is 14, 15, 16, 18% alcohol. So it's not too much different than a table wine. So you don't have to be afraid of sipping it,
But so
and use the same sherry in your soup as what you're going to drink.
and so what you're saying with the alcohol percent is, it's really if I have a sherry or vermouth and club soda, it's a quarter or a half of the alcohol in a vodka soda.
Well, vodka tends to be, say, 35-40%, and the so any of these fortified wines are about half of what the spirits are.
So I can have twice as many.
Exactly. That would be my theory.
Okay, what was the next bottle you got there?
Okay, so then I only have two more to tell you about, and one is Madeira, and I went to the island of Madeira, which is way off the coast of Portugal, though it's part of Portugal. And Madeira was a very American, um, patriotic wine because they were so far off the coast of anything that when the British tried to tax and embargo all of the shipments of wines from Europe, they couldn't get to Madeira, and it was just too far away. And a lot of the ships that had Madeira ended up landing in the US around the Revolutionary War, and Madeira became a very patriotic drink. And our founding fathers writing the Constitution were sipping Madeira. And the people at Justino's were extremely helpful to me. And they also make, Justino's is also a partner with Broadbent, Bartholomew Broadbent.
Hmm.
So Bartholomew and Justino's really helped me a lot learn about Madeira and find out about it. And there's another incredible one called, looks like Enriquez, and it's called Enriquez and Enriquez. And this guy, the winemaker there, is an amazing guy. He's one of these visionary people, and literally visionary. He sees wine in colors. It's amazing to talk to him. So they sent me all over the island and helped me understand, where the vines grow on steep hillsides. And Henry the Navigator in the 1400s wanted to colonize Madeira and claim it for Portugal, and so he asked merchants and traders and businessmen from all over Europe to come in and start growing vines and making wine and growing crops for the people that live there to eat. And so it's been a real strong Portuguese settlement for hundreds of years. I brought my brother back a cap and it says Madeira since 1419.
I'm just jealous that you've been there. I've been trying to find somebody to interview, and I don't know why I didn't think to reach out to you. But I know Kat Miles at Broadbent, and I was going to write to her. But maybe you can help me find somebody. But can you talk about? There's a heat element from originally the boats, but not anymore with Madeira. Can you talk a little bit about that?
No, there's still the heat element. So Madeira is a wine that they accidentally discovered that after they made it and fortified it, they stored it up in their attics, and it was really, really hot, and it became like an oven there. And or they would put them in the holds of ships that went across the equator, and they discovered that this actually improved the wine and improved the complexity of flavors and improved the longevity of the wines. And now they do it deliberately. They actually have heated, when they make the wine, they cool it and ferment it and everything like regular white wine. And then after it's fermented and ready, they'll actually heat it for a while, for a certain amount of time in a certain way, and to mimic these original people that discovered that it was important to heat the wine to preserve it. But also some of the big Madeira producers literally put barrels in windows, in sunny windows, and you can see them just driving down the street.
But that adds to, like, you can, there are restaurants. The first time I was really exposed to Madeira was with Mike Scafidi at Plume Restaurant at the Jefferson Hotel in DC because of the founding fathers connection, and they have 200 different bottles of Madeira open, and it's part of the heating thing that makes it. He calls it the Incredible Hulk of wine, that you can
Yeah.
stay open for a long time because of the heat. Is that right?
It can stay open for a long time. Also, they can preserve it for a long time, and they bottle it. I mean, you can get people that bottle wines that are made 100 years ago, and as they bottle it, they put it in smaller and smaller casks, and finally in glass, like they do for Vendu Naturel and port and everything. When you don't want it to oxidize. At a certain point, it's oxidized enough and it's aged enough, it's not going to get any better. But I mean, you could get a Madeira that's from your parents' birth year, and it's going to be great if they've just bottled it for you. And people do. I think Oliveira does it. So
Yeah.
and they're just a charming group. When you go to visit Oliveira, it looks like a gigantic, colorful marketplace with medals and awards and wines and Madeira cake and books and maps and everything all over. And if you say you want a certain year, chances are they've got it.
That's crazy. And
And
all these wines are like that, right? You can find your birth year if you're like my age, where like I'm 65, nothing is good in 65, but there are some.
you would be fine there, yeah. And yeah, most of these. And there's just
Yeah.
one other wine, the final wine, and that's Marsala, which has gotten a really bad reputation, and kind of deservedly so, because Marsala, I don't know if you know this, but Marsala was made to mimic Madeira. a British merchant went over to Sicily, and he tasted their wines, and they had a kind of not fortified, but an aged one. And he thought, this is awfully like Madeira. Maybe if I just fortify it, it'll sell. And it did. It sold like crazy. And here is one of the, you can see I bought it here. You can buy it. Um, and so this is a Marsala. And so it became so popular that, in fact, the merchants did themselves and producers did themselves no favors by producing so much of it. Then there was phylloxera, and they couldn't get the right grapes and this, and they tried making it out of other stuff, and they never really got their quality standards back. So Marsala quality and production went way down in the 1900s. And it wasn't until the very, very, very end of the century and the beginning of this century that the Marsala producers realized that they were losing their entire heritage, their entire Sicilian heritage of making Marsala in this little area in the western corner of Sicily. And they kind of got themselves together and built up their quality. And they had a couple people that really said, we cannot lose this. We have to be making good quality. And we see a lot of really, really low quality stuff in the supermarket. But now I'm seeing in the last few years marsala that costs 10, 15, $20. And that's the kind of stuff that you can cook with and drink as well. And also, if you ever get a chance to go over there to the Marsala area, definitely do. It's only a couple hours drive from Palermo, on the western tip. It's actually closer to Africa than it is to Italy, but
That's
definitely
hi to Chloe Flower, who just got on here. Hi, Chloe.
was it closer to Africa? It was an African trading place. It was the closest they could get to the mainland. So it's always been a port, and that's why Marsala was really important, because they could make it and get it out to all over the world, especially to Britain. Oh, and I didn't, speaking of port, this is a very modern port. You can see the kind of bottle it's in. It's made by Wars. It's called Optima 10. And there are a lot of tawny ports that people have that are very, very rich. The older they get, they have a 10-year, 20 or 30-year port. You can also get vintage ports. Port is only good enough to declare a vintage about 3 times a decade. So if while you're waiting for your vintage port to mature over the course of 10 or 20 years, you can also drink the tawny ports, because they've been aged in wood, hence the color tawny. And when they are released, they are ready to drink.
Um,
So that's your quick course.
we did go through all of them, and that's amazing. Thank you. So how come you did not? And I'm sure there's a reason, or maybe just you had to pick and choose. But the Barolo Chinato, is that fortified, and is Amaro fortified? And why did you choose not to include those?
Well, those are technically bitters, and they don't necessarily start with wine. I had to rule out things that started with a spirit, as opposed to starting with a wine that was actually fermented, or at least partially fermented. So that's how I came up with the 6 major ones. There are so many other wonderful herbal liqueurs and things like that that I had to put the boundaries somewhere.
No, I love that you did it the way you did it. And then I was telling you, we were kind of laughing earlier about your title, which on Amazon it's strong, comma, sweet and dry, which looks like it's incorrect because of the Oxford comma, but I think now that I really think about it, it is correct. Can you explain that?
Well, the Oxford comma. Well, people there there's a big controversy in comma land, which is a thing that some people put a comma before the end and some people don't, and it depends how you're brought up, what your school teacher said, whether you're from Britain or America or Canada. And there are people that feel really strongly about it, and people that don't care a lot. I'm just happy if people could remember 3 words: strong, sweet, dry. So whether they have a comma or an ampersand or whatever, it's fine with me. Just try to remember those 3 words.
Well, but when I look at it too, it's kind of like all the wines are sweet, or no, all the wines are strong, but they're also,
Yes, because they're fortified and they're not all sweet. That's the point. We
yeah,
went through a lot of different iterations of the title, and I happen to really like this one because I think strong. I'm interested in someone says this is a strong wine. Right away, you've got my interest. What's strong about it? What's good about it? And I don't always want sweet wines, though I do like them. And most people drink dry today, and all of them have versions that are dry.
it's, I know, I think the title is fantastic. We talked about this a long time ago, and I think you got a winner. And it is easy. It rolls off the tongue. It's easy to say, and I hope people can remember the three words.
And I hope they all buy it for their friends for the holidays. We'll be promoting it in the fall.
Well, like the 4th of July just passed, which sometimes people come, you sometimes see a lot of like Madeira articles about right around there in the wine world because
Yes.
father's drink. And I wish there was a little push with Hamilton. You know, I'm sure drank it, and that Hamilton was just. We watched it over the weekend, big 4th of July thing, and there's another reference too. But it is a good gift idea. So we're at.
If they came up with a Hamilton branded Madeira, could you imagine how well that would sell?
You could put a sticker with Hamilton on anything, and it would sell like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine it's a little in the store there. We're at a half an hour, so I'll let you go. And thank you very much. But I did want to ask you, because you're such a good resource for Sauterne also. I'm thinking about doing a thing, and I haven't figured it out yet, about brunch food and Sauterne. What is something that comes at brunch, kind of unexpected or not, but what's a brunch food that you would pair with Sauterne?
Well, I since Sauterne is French and the French don't have brunch, you might as well make it an American and go with anything that has to do with anything salty and smoky. And there is like an old 1920s chicken liver dish
Oh,
for brunch that I did a recipe in one of my cookbooks. I'll have to find it for you. We did a kind of 1920s style brunch, and I think there was a chicken liver thing. And for people that can't stand the idea of chicken livers, you can do a mock one because I also have a recipe for that that involves toasted walnuts and chopped green beans and things like that. It's
that's,
kind of a mock chopped chicken liver.
I would love that. Please find that for me if you have a chance. I'll let you go.
I will. I will.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to say this has been really fast. I thought it was going to be 15 minutes, and we've been talking for half an hour. You're
Go,
really good, Jeff.
it goes really. Thank you. You're very easy to talk to, and it goes fast. Funny enough, but this was a pleasure, and I'm so happy you talked us through the book basically. But it's much more in depth in the book, and definitely get out there and check it out. It's a ebook
Yeah.
too, right? I think that's the one I have is the ebook.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right,
you can just if you're especially if you're a sommelier or wine director, you can just put it on your phone. So if someone asks you a hard question, you can look it up really quickly.
exactly. It's organized very well. Well, thank you so much. It's so nice to chat with you for more than just a few minutes at a time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, honey. Take care now. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.